Hello. Greetings to everyone, also to those who are listening to this Dhamma talk later on. This is Ayya Phalanyani speaking from Anenja Vihara in Germany. It's a nuns' monastery, and we're 6 nuns here, 2 bhikkhunis and some nuns in training. And this December, we do have some more people training here. Presently, the other bhikkhuni, who has ordained as a bhikkhuni just last year, is doing some Vinaya training at the same time while I'm speaking here with new visiting nuns. There are a lot of nuns in this world living alone and having no training. So some of them gathered here, and 2 of them. And so now we have 2 weeks of Vinaya training going on and Dhamma training. And I'm happy to do the Dhamma teaching today for you. And I think we should just briefly do a little bit of breathing and meditation so that we are ready. Something is happening here in the computer again. I think because there's a book. Okay. So just close the eyes, close your eyes. Sit upright. Sit in a way so that you feel your buttocks touching the ground, feeling your buttocks, and sitting right on top of your buttocks, not like behind or in front of them, but just right on top of them. Gives you a stability and enables you to straighten your back. And for meditation, as well as for listening the Dhamma, we should be awake, alert, attentive, and that is what should happen when you're sitting upright. And your breath is just going in your body. And with it, with the breath that you take in, feel wholesomeness, feel goodness, feel harmlessness within you. There might be other things in the air that you breathe. But as if there were an external filter, when you breathe in, everything opens, everything softens, everything relaxes. and brightens. And should there be a remainder of unwholesomeness or anything ungood, unwell that you have within you and have not yet released, that, like a tree, you just transform. You breathe normally, not slowing it down, not making it faster, just breathing normal. With every breathing out, you release stress. When you are about to go to work, and this is a before work Dhammatalk, then release all the tiredness, release all the anxiety, release all the stress about what is coming up. And when you're in a place where it's evening and you are about to go to bed, then you do just the same. By breathing out, you release everything. And when you breathe in, you inhale everything good. And don't worry about the unwholesomeness. There will always be something unwholesome. This is samsara, where we're living it, where we're living in. We're turning our wheels, our rounds, in samsara. It is not to be expected that everything around us will ever be just fine, will ever be just good. It's not, it's samsara. So just let it be, and make sure that where you are, where that body and mind conglomerate that you perceive as I and as a self, that there, at that time and space, is no unwholesomeness whatsoever, just pure wholesomeness. You just continue breathing and open your heart and open your mind for some Dhamma teaching. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, all you good people, wherever you are, and whoever tunes in later from wherever, this is Ayya Phalanyani speaking from a ninja vihara in Germany, and today we continue what we started last week, last Wednesday. We will talk about Digha Nikaya number 34, and whatever translation you consult, it might have different names. But if you remember and if you want to read it, there are books out there, there are websites out there where you can read the sutta. We compare from the web page Sutta Central, the translation of Bhante Sujato with the translation of Maurice Welch, which is available in a print version. But you find most, I think even the version of Maurice Welch may be available in internet. But there are at least two different English translations of this sutta. It's called in Pali the Dasutra Sutta, and up to 10 is how Bhante Sujato translates this sutta. So we were talking about the first row, the thing, the ones, so to say. Now today we are talking about the 10 things of the two. I just briefly remind you that the Buddha was staying at Kampa beside the Gagara lotus pond, and had a large company of 500 bhikkhus with him, and the Venerable Sariputta, who had a very structured mind and put everything, so to say, in lists and in explanatory groups. He was the one who delivered this sermon. Nonetheless, the Buddha was there. So this is nothing where we can say, well, this is not the Buddha's teaching. This is a teaching of the Venerable Sariputta. Nope. This is the Buddha's teaching grouped by Sariputta. In this case, the sutta just before Digha Nikaya number 33 is about pretty much the same things delivered by the Buddha himself, but this sutta 34 is just more, if you want to memorize, for example, if you want to remember, it is just nice to have these things in groups of 10. So you can remember these things easier. And the Venerable Sariputta always came up with questions. He said there is one thing, or in this next group, there are two things that greatly help. There are two things that need to be developed. There are two things to be thoroughly known. There are two things to be abandoned. There are two things that conduce to diminution. There are two things that conduce to distinction. There are two things hard to penetrate. There are two things made to be arise. There are two things to be thoroughly learned, and there are two things to be realized. Last week it was only one. Today it's two. So now what? And these are the questions the Venerable Sariputta is asking those monks. Which are the things that greatly help? Or when you think about the translation of Bhante Sujato, what are two things that are helpful? And that is mindfulness and situational awareness, or mindfulness and clear comprehension. What are two things that should be developed? Bhante Sujato translates serenity and discernment. And here in our translation we have calm and insight. Bhante Sujato translates the next questions. What two things should be completely understood? And that is name and form. What two things should be given up? Ignorance and craving for continued existence. What two things make things worse? Being hard to admonish and having bad friends. What two things lead to distinction? Being easy to admonish and having good friends. What two things are hard to comprehend? What are the causes and reasons for the corruption of sentient beings? And what are the causes and reasons for the purification of sentient beings? What two things should be produced? Two knowledges, knowledge of ending and knowledge of non-arising. What two things should be directly known? Two elements, the conditioned element and the unconditioned element. What two things should be realized? Knowledge and freedom. So these 20 things are true, real, and accurate, not unreal, not otherwise. They were rightly awakened to by the realized one. I stuck with Bhante Sujato's translations just to go through the entire paragraph. This is all we are going to talk about. So first, what greatly helps. You remember we talked about this last week. There are things that greatly help or help a lot. Mindfulness and clear comprehension, or mindfulness and clear awareness. And in fact, it's the Pali words sati and sampajanya. So as I'm using usually the translations of Bhikkhu Bodhi, there is where the clear comprehension comes from. So situational awareness for sampajanya, or clear awareness by Morris Welch. Just, I want to use all these words because it's much easier to understand these very difficult concepts in our modern languages, where we usually don't have the same words, and we don't use the same meaning even for words. And so it's we grew up more in a Christian context maybe. So we do not have the full understanding of the Pali or Sanskrit words. And I'm so grateful, I'm so happy that I can read them in English and in German, because to read different translations gives you different ideas and rounds up, so to say, the entire thing. So sati, we usually say mindfulness. This is a very modern word used almost like mindfulness practice is so common nowadays. It could also be awareness. And the thing with sati is that it is something that makes you remember things. Sati sometimes has the quality, not sometimes, it definitely has the quality of remembering. So you do things so aware and so clear, so mindful, that even if you forget about them, when there's a trigger and you need to know, then you would know. This is an important aspect of samasati. Now, sampajanya. Janya, that has something to do with wisdom. It could mean only just to know, but it also has a connotation of being excellent. And this sum is a compound, is a prefix that you use when things are gathered. So there we have something that takes things together. And so you can imagine knowing put together. if you want. I'm trying to translate those words for me so that I have a kind of a picture for them, and that I'm not a native English speaker, but clear comprehension really is for me the best translation of the word sampajanya into English. You have so much knowledge gathered about a fact that you have been mindful of, that you have observed beforehand, so that you really gain a full understanding, a clear comprehension about that one thing. And to have this, that Sariputta says, or the Buddha says in other suttas, greatly helps. Important to develop because it greatly helps us on the way to Nibbana. What is the next thing? What are the next two things? That would be something to be developed. What two things are to be developed? That is calm and insight. And Pali translation, or not translation, in Pali that would be samatha and vipassana. Samatha or samatha is a practice to gain tranquility and stillness of mind. Stillness of mind is so important because when the mind is not still, when it is muddled, you wouldn't see anything. You could have awareness as much as you like, and you wouldn't be able to develop sampajanya, the clear comprehension of things, because it's just too muddled. So samatha is leading you towards calmness, towards stillness of the mind and of the heart. Whereas vipassana means something like seeing clearly, where the vi is just a prefix that puts emphasis on the main root of the word, which is pasana in that case. We don't go into further detail about endings and grammatic. There I can just recommend a Pali course by Dhamma USA. Bhante Sumito is giving a wonderful, brilliant Pali course. So if you want to learn more about the grammar of the Pali language, then turn towards Dhamma USA. Very good. But here, so just to have an overview and a basic understanding of what it is all about. So pasana is just seeing. A form. There are several words for seeing, and this has a prefix that puts emphasis. This emphasis is not specifically meaning clear, but since it is putting emphasis on the seeing, it makes it so that the word becomes seeing clearly. Calm and insight meditation. In the Buddha's time, this was not separate. There was one practice, and that led to liberation. And that consisted of both parts, samatha and vipassana. And the first, calm, samatha, is to be done by samadhi. You practice focus. That is the media. Focusing on one thing is the way to get the mind focused, to get the mind concentrated. So you have this one-pointedness, that focus on one thing. And that may be the breath, maybe a syllable, maybe I point somewhere in the body, maybe the flame of a candle, maybe whatsoever. Your teacher normally gives you an object. And that brings you to calm and stills your mind. We do it by observing the breath and knowing it's rising, knowing the rising and the falling of the belly. But there are different ways, and you don't need to do it all the same. You can do it your way or your teacher's way. I'm not the person who says you must do it that way. I think it's the best way, of course, but there are different ways to do it. So, and the insight develops when you name things. So you have your focus, and that can be like a laser light, very pointed and very capable of really burning through the things at one point. And you turn this light towards the things and you see them clearly. So in the beginning you train to have the focus and the concentration, the collectedness really on one point. And later you can open up your heart and mind to the present moment and become aware of things as they really are. And then there is a sound, and you know it's hearing. And then there is a feeling arising. And you name it so that you know it. And this makes your calmness even deeper, and really brings stillness to your mind. Even if you name the present moment, you trust me, that leads to stillness. Although you might in the beginning think it leads astray because your mind is going, the little light of awareness is going here and there. But that is not the case. The longer you practice this, the more it becomes really, really still. And then you can, with a still mind, You can really see the things as they are. It's like when the dirt in the muddled water settles down and the water becomes clear again. This is how our mind is. It's first in the beginning, it's all just muddled up. But when we sit down and we sit still, it all calms down. So this calm and insight, samatha and vipassana, are the two things that should be developed. What should be known, but really thoroughly known, really comprehended, understood, so that our mind is drenched by the knowledge. What would that be? Can be many things, but here it is mind and body, nama rupa. We have had a talk about nama rupa. But I think I should a little bit, I have little time. So nama rupa, the mind and the body, should be thoroughly known. Known as there is one thing that can comprehend. That is one part of us. And there is another thing that cannot comprehend. When I hit my hand with my other hand, the hand itself cannot comprehend that there is pain. It can be felt, it can be felt and known because there is a mind within this body. And what should be understood in this body and mind is that there is nothing within this conglomerate and mind of mind and body that could be said of, this is I, this is mine, this is myself. There is just nothing like that. This is just a mind in a body, or a body with a mind. And we're lucky that it is this way. There are unfortunately even living bodies without a mind. So don't be disheartened that you have a thinking, understanding, and active mind. Be happy you have it. But train it and understand that this is not mine. This am I not. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is to be thoroughly known. Then there's something that needs to be abandoned. And this is easier to guess. What needs to be abandoned? Of course, ignorance. The first thing in the chain of the 12 links of the dependent origination, avidya, needs to be abandoned, needs to be given up, needs to be overcome, however you put it. We do away with it. That would be the best. Avidya, ignorance, and the craving for existence, and that is bhavatanha. There are three cravings that we have: bhavatanha, vibhavatanha, and the first thing is kama tanha. So the craving for sensual pleasures, this craving for existence, and the craving for non-existence. And this craving for existence really is an obstacle for our enlightenment, for our letting go of of this existence. I can't say, unfortunately. I would like to tell you, yeah, you just need to do this and that to give up that craving for existence. But this is really so hard to give up. And then you sit there and maybe in meditation, and it becomes stiller and stiller, and you think, oh, maybe soon I'm enlightened. And then you breathe and become calmer and calmer, and it's so nice, maybe. And then there's a sound, and this shock is craving for existence, because you have this it's something inherited. That is something, an instinct. It's an instinct that when we feel threatened by a sound or by something, then we get into shock. And it's funny, we can't willingly give it up. We, with a lot of concentration and force, we can maybe in a situation like, but not react. But this craving for existence, this craving for being or keeping us alive, it's really, it's deep sitting. And when you read the suttas, you understand those arahants and the Buddha, they didn't have it. And it sounds weird when you read it. There is this story of a bhikkhuni, and a bhikkhu took her food away on a daily basis, and she would have died. But somebody almost ran over her with a cart, and she fell down, and he thought it was his fault that she fell, but it was not. She explained to him, oh, it's just that I don't have eaten. She wouldn't have said anything, neither to the monk, neither to that man, nor to the Buddha. She would have just died, starved to death. So an arahant or a Buddha have completely different approach to this, because this inborn, instilled within us, ingrained craving for existence is no longer there. It is abandoned. So when they sit in meditation, and it's gone still and stiller, and they get into Nirodha Samapatti, in the fruit of arahantship, and then, they wouldn't probably shake or be disturbed by a sound or so. And avijja is the not knowing of the things as they really are. Is the not understanding that they are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. When the avijja, the not understanding, is given up and abandoned, you would understand that things are anicca, dukkha, anatta. And that basically in everything is the seed of dukkha inherent. That needs to be abandoned. What leads to downfall? Roughness and consorting with evil. This roughness, like if you are careless, carelessness, roughness, that leads to downfall. If you do things careless or rough, you're not doing them mindful. It's that easy. You can't do both. You can't do things rough and mindful. That is something that doesn't work together. So mindfulness would be really a way to overcome roughness or coarseness, boldness. And consorting with evil, that means anything that is unwholesome. That means evil people, evil words, evil whatsoever. Evil people certainly also. And most probably mainly because the Pali word for it is papa mittata. And that is friendship with evil. But the Buddha says not with evil people, but with evil. And that he leaves it open, whether that is evil people or anything else. It can be evil ideas, no? And if you harbor friendly thoughts to unwholesome thoughts and think this seems like a good idea if I cheat somebody, then that would be consorting with evil. And what leads to uprisal? That would be gentleness and consorting with the good or with good. Gentleness as in softness, meek, but in a good sense, soft, tender. And when you're soft and tender and gentle and do the things like you touch something soft and tender, you're most probably aware of what you're doing. So understand that if you try to be mindful, gentleness helps to be more mindful. And mindfulness, on the other hand, leads you to gentleness. You can't be cruel and rough when you're really mindful. There's that story, most probably you heard it because I tell it often, but in the meditation center where I was, you always knew who is a new arrival and who is there for a longer time. Because when the people came, we were not allowed to do anything except meditation and except 15 minutes daily or 10 minutes daily of sweeping after lunch. So there was naturally a run for the brooms. And everybody wanted the good and soft brooms. And in the beginning, the people, when they came from this world into the meditation center, they were sweeping like whoosh, 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 really harsh and getting it done, no? And the longer they stayed there, it became more shh, 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 soft and tender. And when there was a little ant crawling on the path, they would let the ant pass. They would let the ant go first and then continue sweeping. So, gentleness is a way to develop awareness, but also awareness is a thing that gives rise to gentleness and softness naturally. And talked about consorting with the evil, and that's the opposite with consorting with the good. There is not only a good person, not only everything that is good, good in a sense that it leads to enlightenment, that it leads to liberation. When it is good in this sense, not in a maybe personal idea. So I might be thinking, oh, now it would be good that I sleep, or that I do some whatsoever. And I think, oh, that's really good. But it's not good for enlightenment. And the things we talk about here shall be good for our enlightenment. So when it leads to enlightenment, then, and away from being cruel, away to harm other people or ourselves, then it leads to our uprising. What is hard to see? The root and the condition of defilement. And as the second, the root and condition of purification. That is really hard to see. And when you talk with people in the meditation reports, in the interviews, maybe as a person outside, you see the root of the problem. You know, there's somebody having so much aversion for something. That's quite common. But the people can't see, we cannot see the cause of it. We cannot understand the conditions. Of course, it arises conditioned. Everything arises conditioned. It can't arise otherwise. So there are conditioned things that are happening that lead to a certain result, say to anger. And we do not observe closely enough to see the beginning of it. So we don't understand the root of it. And then we try to go to an analyst, and what we do here in the meditation is we're not analyzing it. We're just trying to look closer and closer and closer, so that no information slips our attention, that there's not 1 second where we do not see a thing as it is arising and ceasing. And seeing this every moment, you also see the causes and conditions. Because one thing leads to another. So it's natural that you start to see the causes and conditions, but it's hard to see. you really need to observe so closely. And if you don't, you just see the result, anger. And it's important to understand that it is hard to see, because usually we lose patience. So when we understand it is really hard to do that, we might have more patience with us. We might have more diligence and put into more effort into it. What is what do we need to make arise? The knowledge of the destruction of the defilement and their non-recurrence. Samavayamu. We need to make sure that our unwholesome and evil thoughts, actions, and words are done with, that we abandon them. Once they are abandoned, we don't want to let them arise again. And then if we are on a good path, then they do not reoccur. And when they do not reoccur, those unwholesome and evil things, then we are on a really good path, on the path to enlightenment. And we can observe and we can give rise to the understanding. This unwholesome and evil has not arisen within me. And we learn how. It's not working like from one moment to the other. It's years of practice. It's years of observing, restraining, working on us. And then we learn the mechanisms. When we see how the things arise, we can just jump in that very moment. When something unwholesome wants to arise, we jump in with our awareness and stop it right there. This is not possible in the beginning, but with a lot of practice, it is possible. And that would be the beginning of the good path. The end of the good path it does never ever reoccur again. So next thing, the 9th, that is thoroughly learned. And these are 2 elements, the conditioned and the unconditioned. The conditioned is the world that we live in. If you say that's samsara, that's everything. The unconditioned is nibbana. And 1 or 2 things need to be realized: knowledge and liberation, vidya and vimutti. Before we had it with avidya, and that by practicing, by working with us, by observing every moment, highly concentrated, highly alert and aware of what is going on every single moment, we develop vidya. And this vidya is the moment of liberation, of vimutti, liberation from suffering, liberation from all defilements. Because we understood that those defilements will never occur again. Okay. Do you have any important questions about this? Our hour is up. So I would just stop here. And wish you a very good week, a great day ahead, or a good night ahead. May you realize what needs to be realized. Bye bye.